Good morning, everyone. We will call the meeting to order at 9 a.m. Welcome to the Board of Commissioners meeting. Please take a moment to silence your cell phone. If you wish to address the board during public comment, please add your name to the sign-up sheet at the back of the room. For online attendees who would like to comment, please announce yourself during introductions and indicate you wish to provide comments. And I will also call for any online comments. If you are presenting to the board today, the microphones at the table are active when the red light is on. If the red light is not on, press the button on the base of the microphone. And please make sure to speak directly into the microphone pretty close. And with that, we are going to do a round of introductions. We're going to try something a little different today, which is just to announce everyone up here and then move on. So with that, Nancy Wise, Commissioner.
Pat Malone, Commissioner.
Gabe Shepard, Commissioner.
Rachel McEnany, County Administrator.
All right. And with that, we will review and approve the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll consider that approved. Are there any announcements? Hearing none. And that brings us to comments from the public. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to provide comment? And we will be limiting comment today to 3 minutes per person. Thank you. And sure enough, I have Jan Napak on this list. Come on up, Jan. Good to see you.
I would like to provide comment online. This is Debbie Palmer. I didn't know if you were calling for that, but I just wanted to let you know that I would like to say something too. So I'll mute.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Jan Napak. I live about 3/4 of a mile from here, so it's very easy and convenient to be here. Thank you. I gave a copy of my comments, observations to Ms. Milo, and there's one copy up there that hopefully you're sharing. My observations from January 3rd, 2025 are in that, I guess you could call it a report, but what we're looking at here is the first top page shows how the water goes from the north to the south across the old Reservoir Road and makes a sharp left turn. It doesn't go under the railroad, I think, as it should. The volume of water and the swiftness of the water was really rather amazing. I'm hoping that just seeing this and looking at the other illustrations on the back side of that page show that what I think the channel is supposed to be doing is going underneath the railroad ballast and then crossing underneath 53rd, some distance south of the trestle. So I just thought maybe there's something that the engineers might be able to do to rectify or simply rectify or improve the situation. I really don't know. I know that I have heard quite a few comments in my position as a city councilor from residents. And I know Dunawee Creek has a long history. Before long ago, the upper reach was tiled. It was plowed and tiled. There was a shake mill, a log pond. The log pond was cleaned out. The upper reaches of the creek were revitalized, I guess you could say. And we have beavers as well. So I'm not sure if, obviously hydraulics have changed and if anything can be done. I have really no idea. But I do know that one of the things that I keep thinking back when I used this road. The last time I used this road in an emergency was a long time ago, twice when I on the way to Good Sam with contractions 4 minutes apart. And if you want to be in a car with a crazed badger, no, this is what I'm thinking, that we don't want this situation or a situation to occur that could be very complicated. That's it.
Thank you very much. And normally we don't respond to public comment, but this has been a topic that has been very popular. We've heard about it a lot. It's been an ongoing issue. So I'll just make a couple statements. The ultimate fix is constructing the 53rd Street Railroad overpass. That design has been on the books for a couple of decades now. We have 30% design completed and have submitted grant applications to complete the design. However, we have not been successful in obtaining those grants. Staff continues to look for funding to build the project, both federal and state grants, but to date, the project has not been as competitive as other projects submitted for those particular funding opportunities. Staff is investigating adding permanent flooding, road closed, and detour signs on roads leading towards the underpass to give residents more notice that the road is closed. Public Works does close it off, but community members will come through and move the barricades and just drive through. There aren't really any effective interim measures available to drain the low spot any quicker than letting downstream waters recede. There have been some beaver dam measures that the county has implemented, which minimizes the impact, but it's still just a pretty big issue. So thank you.
Good luck. Thank you.
And is there anyone else in the room who'd like to provide public comment? Hearing none, we will go online. I know Debbie would like to comment. Debbie, go ahead and unmute yourself and you will have 3 minutes.
Okay. Good morning, commissioners. Commissioner Shepherd, welcome to the board. I look forward to your refreshing belief in greater transparency in government, including your intent to listen to your constituents and use what you learn to shape the county's future for public good. Thank you. Okay, on to my comment. I see in Bailey's upcoming landfill history presentation, he mentions improved air quality via landfill gas collection as part of the 1976 Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. I would like to speak to this as regards to Republic Services and its methane leaks at the dump. As you know, in 2022, the EPA made an announced air quality inspection and found so many methane exceedances violations that they ran out of marking flags. One of the leaks was so high, it maxed out their monitoring equipment, explosive levels. 2 years later, in 2024, the EPA made an unannounced inspection and found no improvement. In this case, over 40 exceedance violations significantly higher than the EPA maximum threshold, including one more than 200 times over the limit. The limit is 500 parts per million by volume. This leak was over 100,000 parts per million. In these inspections, they only walked a fraction of the total surface of the dump. Think about that for a minute. If the landfill is leaking like that all over, and we have no reason to think it's magically sealed tight everywhere but where it was inspected, you begin to see how that graphic VNex presented to you last October, the one showing that mind-bogglingly high figure of climate-damaging methane the landfill spews into our atmosphere, is not an exaggeration. What's Republic's solution for the methane leaks? Install more gas collection wells. Well, numerous public complaints of landfill gas odor clearly demonstrate that that is not working. Methane may be odorless, but it's inextricably mixed with the stinky stuff. The more stink, the more methane we know is escaping. Speaking of odor, Republic Services repeatedly dismisses complaints, in effect saying we all must be lying because they don't detect any odor and everything is operating as it should. I think it's important you realize how regularly Republic Services gaslights you. Gaslighting being a deliberate act to sow confusion and doubt, including denying things that happen or reframing them to fit a chosen narrative. Well, they deny the odor, and when confronted about anything else, stick to the corporate narrative. Coffin Butte landfill is highly engineered with multiple safety measures in place and meets or exceeds all regulatory requirements. Clearly, what they're doing is not working. The landfill is a ticking environmental and fiscal time bomb. I'll leave you with a quote from The Story of Stuff apropos to this discussion. We aren't paying landfill companies to dispose of our trash. We're paying them to turn it into future public health hazards that we'll end up footing the bill for. Truer words were never spoken. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Is there anyone else online who would like to provide public comment? Hearing none, we will move on to our work session. First up is item 5.1, our state legislative preview with Rick Krager, our Assistant County Administrator, and with CFM advocates, Ryan Gleason and Zach Reeves. And thank you, Rick. Look at that. Brand new to our meetings, we have name tags for staff so that everybody can see who they are. Welcome.
If you wouldn't mind pulling that up, we would appreciate that. That would be great. Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Rick Krager, Assistant County Administrator for Benton County. Pleased to be here today. And as in my years of state government, it was always kind of nice to say kind of a happy new year because it is the beginning of the 2021 legislative session. And the state perspective, always that new opportunities for new ideas, innovative thinking, policy changes, budget, and all that fun stuff. So we are here today to just give you a quick overview. I am going to play a very, very limited role and turn it over to our resident experts from CFM who could not be here today. They're online because obviously they're in Salem, probably going through about 2,300 bills right now and trying to figure out all those various impacts. And I'm sure they will enlighten you a little bit in terms of that. So with that, again, I'll just say at the beginning, appreciation as always for CFM. They do such an outstanding job of keeping us informed on top of things, and I'm just excited to have another session with them. So with that, I'll turn it over to Zach and or Ryan, who wants to kick this off.
Thanks, Rick. Good morning, everyone. I can't see you all right now, but Commissioner Shepard, welcome aboard. We're happy to have you here. As Rick said, my name's Zach Reeves and Ryan Gleason is here with me. We are your contract lobbyists at CFM. And as Rick mentioned, today is the first day of the 2025 legislative session, and I have my truck in the shop right now, so I'm about 2 miles away from you all, unable to go anywhere. But I will be headed up to Salem here shortly, and I know Ryan is headed down there as well. So we're just here to give you all a kind of a brief overview of what to expect this session. I guess next slide, please. I forgot we've got a PowerPoint presentation there. So just kind of lay out what the session is going to look like, try to frame some budget outlooks there, provide you with some kind of an overview of maybe what some of the overarching session themes are going to be, what the legislature is going to be after, and then we can delve into some Benton County specific priorities. Next slide, please. So after a few close elections in some Mid-Willamette Valley House seats, Democrats are going to have supermajorities in both chambers. So as a reminder, that's 36 out of 60 in the House and 18 out of 30 in the Senate. And I'll kick it over to Ryan to chat about the House.
Yeah. Hey, commissioners. Thanks for having us. Ryan Gleason here. In the House, there's some really interesting dynamics. We have some really new leadership, and then we have some return of really skilled leadership on the Republican side. So as you all probably know by this point, and if you don't, we're here to tell you, Representative Christine Drazan, you probably know that name. She was the Republican leader in the House before she ran against Tina Kotek for the governor's seat in 2022. She is back, and she is in the legislature. She is the House Republican leader, and she is going to give new Speaker Julie Fahey and new Democratic leader Ben Bowman a run for their money. She's been around this world for a very long time. She was staff when she was young. She's been a lobbyist. She's been an elected official and actually in the role of minority leader. And so it'll be interesting to see what kind of tactics and I guess trickery, if you will, when you're in the minority that you bring forward, and how Speaker Fahey and Leader Bowman plan to address those issues issue. So really freshman, kind of younger leadership on the Democratic side and a little bit more skilled leadership on the Republican side in the House.
And then on the Senate side, it's a little bit of the same. You've got some beginning to be familiar faces in roles, and then some new faces elsewhere. Kate Lieber is stepping in as the co-chair of Ways and Means. I guess we're skipping down to key committee appointments there, but this will be her first, I believe, session as budget chair in a long session where they're tasked with crafting a biennial budget. So some new faces there. Senate President Rob Wagner is entering his second long session as Senate President. So has had a chance to settle in there. There was some upheaval on the leadership side with Senator Casey Jama as the newly elected Senate Majority Leader. And then you've got Senator Daniel Bonham on the Republican side is the new Senate Minority Leader. And he is one of several Republican senators who is term limited from running again due to walkouts in previous sessions. So this will be his last long session. And the Republicans on the Senate side will be looking at new faces in a lot of roles because they've had some pretty significant turnover due to several of their members being unable to run again due to walkouts and the ballot measure that passed, I believe, in 2022. So that's kind of the lay of land for those two chambers. I guess with the Benton delegation as well. We've got an old face and a new face, two Sarahs. We've got Senator Sarah Gelser-Bluen is entering her. She's been in the legislature for several terms now. I'm not sure exactly how long she's been a senator, but she has a fair bit of seniority in the Senate. We're all very familiar with her. Representative Sarah Finger McDonald, this is her first term. And she has some key committee assignments that may be helpful for Benton County as we kind of go through the process of transitioning from Representative, then Speaker, now Attorney General Dan Rayfield. So next slide, please.
And we wanted to do a quick budget outlook and kind of overview to kind of start our update after the leadership updates. So in December, there was a revenue forecast that came out with a new economist leading the charge on that. And so Carl Riccadonna is our new state economist, and he and his team yet again predicted a kicker, but they think they got to the root cause of why there have been so many kickers over the years, which was music to Democrats' ears, less exciting for Republicans, but they believe they found the issue and they should be able to have more reliable forecasts moving forward and less instability with that kicker. So we'll, Oregonians will see a kicker in 2026, but hopefully moving forward, we'll have a little bit more predictability. That December forecast showed about $2.7 billion to spend. Folks like Zach and I and advocates, lobbyists, everyone else outside of the legislature was really excited. We were all really excited to see that number. There are a lot of investments that the legislature can make in water, housing, transportation, and we're all advocating for those this session. Legislators and leadership were a little bit less excited. They believed that they were up against a cliff and this money is going to fund current service level moving forward, and there's not much more to invest in other priorities. So as you all know, we're also hitting some federal funds cliffs with ARPA and everything else expiring, and we're kind of unsure what that landscape will be moving forward. At least here in Oregon, we built a lot into the budget with one-time money. And so it'll be interesting to see the legislature's decision-making on how they either cut or reduce programs down or what, how they spend general fund to build those programs up moving forward. So we'll have two more forecasts before the legislative session ends and they have to make final budget decisions. So we'll have one in February that's upcoming, and then we'll have one again in May that the legislature will use to base all of their final numbers on. And if you recall from 2023, that is when the legislature got a massive boost and was able to spend about $1 billion additional dollars in that long session. So everyone no one will care about February. Everyone will care about May, and we'll keep you all posted as we see those revenue forecasts coming in. Next slide, please.
So, everything on this session themes slide is going to be familiar to you all. You know, it's the similar priorities to what we've seen in recent sessions. Chief amongst them, you know, housing and homelessness continues to be a crisis in the state. We saw recently Governor Kotek extended her homelessness state of emergency, and we expect, you know, things to very much be the same in terms of providing funding for both temporary shelter to address homelessness, and then to provide funding for and provide avenues to new housing opportunities statewide. And so the governor and her housing policy advisor, Matthew Shabold, have been working really nonstop for the last several years to provide opportunities for increased housing. So we'll see a pretty comprehensive housing bill that the governor is going to have as her, I would assume, number one priority, or if not number one, very close to it. We haven't seen that bill be introduced yet. We've seen early versions of it, but it will be a fairly comprehensive policy package, and then they will have some budget requests associated with that. Similar to that, there's been a temporary shelter work group led by Representative Pam Marsh out of Ashland that has worked through the interim to provide some avenues forward in terms of addressing shelter needs statewide. And so we expect a pretty significant chunk of funding. As Ryan mentioned, there may be some additional dollars for the legislature to sprinkle around. We expect those two to kind of advance hand in hand through the process and to be fairly early priorities of the democratically held legislature.
Thanks, Zach. Moving to behavioral health, this remains a top priority for Governor Tina Kotek and the legislature. In the 2024 session, they passed House Bill 4002. Unfortunately, the funding for that bill and the programs that were stood up to support those efforts were not funded in perpetuity. And so the legislature is going to have to look at how they're going to structure funding deflection and other vital programs that relate to behavioral health. They're going to have to make more investments in public defense. They didn't do anything for youth, which was a frustration for a number of legislators and local governments. We want to fund youth behavioral health efforts. We will also see a cliff for education. Rick could probably speak a little bit better to this than we can, but the legislature will need to make a massive investment in the state school fund to avoid massive cuts across the state. We kind of got a preview of that with the PPS, the Portland Public Schools strike that we saw. I think that was a little over a year ago. Additionally, the Medicaid tax is something that's going to have to be renegotiated in the hospital provider tax. So all of those conversations are going on over the next 6 months. And water. The legislature has done, and I just have to say, Representative Gomberg, Representative Helm, Representative Owens have all done the Lord's work to make water a priority in this state. So we are so thankful. We know that touches on priorities for Benton County. And so Zach and I will be closely tracking a water package in some conversations that we've had with the chairs of the one of the co-chairs of the House Ag, Land Use, Natural Resources and Water Committee. They really built the initial package that has come out around not having funding. They built it on the this August forecast that came out where they didn't have a lot of money to play with. So when I chatted with Rep. Helm about kind of how is the package going to evolve this session, he was really excited that there's a little bit more funding opportunities available. And so there have been this Water Caucus survey that's gone out, and we're working with a couple of the cities in Benton County to make sure that they have filled out those surveys to be on that list. And then I'll kick it to Zach to talk transportation.
Yeah, and kind of the the final leg on the stool of this session is going to be an effort to pass a transportation package. You'll recall in 2017, the legislature passed House Bill 2017, which was about a $5 billion investment in transportation infrastructure. That was driven largely by a fairly comprehensive or significant increase in the gas tax. With the increase in EVs in the last 10 years and the increasing fuel efficiency of vehicles across the state, the gas tax is not a sustainable funding mechanism for transportation infrastructure anymore. it would require a very sizable gas tax increase in order to hit numbers close to what we saw in the last transportation package. And so the legislature is looking at a more pared down package this time around, and then also trying to come up with a sustainable model for funding transportation moving into the future. We know that the gas tax is becoming less and less sustainable and just not an efficient way of funding transportation. In addition to that, it doesn't capture all the users on the road, so there's an equity problem associated with it. Anybody who has an EV is not paying into maintaining any sort of transportation infrastructure in the state. So they will be looking at a more comprehensive method of funding transportation. But as we saw in 2015 and 2017, these are very, very heavy lifts that require some hard votes amongst legislators. They're raising a significant amount of revenue, and that makes some folks hesitate, and you've got to keep everybody on board. So a heavy lift. ODOT does have a very sizable budget hole just in its budget, and so that one way or another needs to be filled, and for ODOT to continue operating, across the state. So it very much remains to be seen whether that will get done, but it will be another focal point of session. So next slide, please. Go ahead, Ryan.
And we can talk Benton County priorities now. So as many of you know, we've been really successful. The county has in securing funding for a variety of priorities over the last number of years, which has been fantastic. And really trying to wrap up some of that work is prioritizing the Jackson Fraser Boardwalk. And so really exciting news today. We finally received the 2025 capital construction project request form. So Rick, you have that in your inbox, and we'll make sure to get the updated version to the capital construction committee. There is a kind of new process to submit those forms. And so Rick, we can talk about that offline, but really great news. We finally have that form. The Sustainable Materials Management Plan. So that is not something that we necessarily have in front of the legislature. There's going to be a number of topics that we'll be tracking that are relevant to the conversation that's taking place off to the side. And we'll want to be keeping key legislators apprised of how the SMMP is moving forward and developing plans for a sustainable materials management plan. We are also working with Adair Village on their wastewater treatment plan. As you all know, you penned a letter of support to get some state funding for that project. We talked a little bit about the water package, but this is, we see water packages come in many forms, but over the last couple of years, they have been making investments in water projects that deliver doors and lead to increased housing. As you know, Governor Kotek's top priority is increasing the number of housing units available in this state. And so their office specifically is really focused on these larger infrastructure projects that will lead to additional doors. So really excited to be moving that forward. One note that we didn't make at the beginning of the presentation is that our own Sarah Finger McDonald, Representative Finger McDonald, is actually the vice chair of the House Ag, Natural Resources, Water, the very long list of things that committee tackles. So she's a vice chair of that committee. She'll be working closely with the co-chairs on developing that list. And as you know, Representative Gomberg has been playing a key role in those water conversations as they impact his district, which is part of Benton County. So great news for us. We will also be tracking ongoing funding for House Bill 4002 deflection programs and all of the other behavioral health concepts that are out there. And so in the bill stack that we sent to Rick and the rest of the team, you'll see a number of behavioral health priority concepts and placeholders moving through the legislative process that we'll be tracking. And then there's going to be a ton of bills that impact county operations and essential services. So we'll want to be keeping a close eye on those bills as we move through the legislative session. Zach, anything to add?
No, I think that was it. Thank you all. I guess just to kind of wrap up here, on the screen there are some dates of session. Obviously, January 21st today is the first day of official session. As those of you who have kind of been through this before, the long sessions, they play out at a little more of a methodical pace. And so it's not until April 9th that will see our first chamber deadline, which is when bills have to be posted for a work session in order to be still alive. And then skip down there to June 29th is the constitutional sine die. So they have 160 days from today to get their work done. The only thing they are constitutionally mandated to do in a in a long session is pass a balanced budget. And so, obviously there are other things that are going to come along with that, but the most important thing that the legislature does is pass a budget for the next 2 years. So that's kind of what we've got to look forward to for the next 5.5 months here. And I think if you go to the next slide here, Ryan and I are happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
And commissioners, if I might just quickly add that, first of all, again, thanks to Zach and Brian for, again, great overview of the upcoming session and some of the priorities issues, not only from the state standpoint, but county priorities as well. I know the sheriff is on today as well, and we are clearly working closely with the sheriff on different items. Two of those, I think it's important to mention. One, we're been talking a little bit about the project around communications and improvement around the emergency network. Determining if there's some opportunities. I know Representative Gomberg has said specifically that they're looking at some form of public safety package where this project would be a nice fit into. So that is a conversation that we've been having with the sheriff and under sheriff in relation to continuing to expand there. And then we're also, as always, looking very closely at community corrections. That has been a challenging area in the past in terms of having adequate state funding. This is going to be a big piece of AOC. I'm sorry, Association of Sheriff's Office. Sheriff's Office Association is going to be carrying a lot of the water in relation to that. But I have put that on Zach and Ryan's radar because I know it's something that we're all very, very concerned in terms of continued funding for community corrections into the future. So just wanted to mention those two quickly. And with that, open any questions you have.
Questions from commissioners?
Sure. I'll start out with an answer. You were asking about how long Senator Gilser Bluin has been around, and it's approximately 10 years in the House and 10 years in the Senate. So she has a lot of experience and, like you mentioned, seniority. Zach, a couple things on transportation. I've heard the theme for the ODOT transportation package of operation and maintenance. Is that accurate?
Commissioner Malone, I think it's too soon to tell at this point. They are obviously going to aim for a point up here, and where they end up is kind of anybody's guess at this point. But ODOT does have, I believe, and this is I'm speaking off the cuff here, and I don't want to be quoted on these numbers, but I believe it's about a $200 million budget hole that ODOT has, so that they will be coming into the biennium with looking at that number. So at the very least, they need to fill that budget hole so that ODOT can continue to perform operations and maintenance. But they are aiming higher with the intent of providing some transportation projects around the state and really trying to build a more robust package so that everybody can be on board with it.
And I'll just add one thing to that too. I think there's one other piece where the legislature is going to have to make really strategic decisions is around the HCAS. And I'm getting out over my skis here. But the heavy users are currently paying more, and we're supposed to have a 50-50 split of who's paying for the roads between heavy users and light vehicles. And that, to quote a colleague of ours at CFM, that is out of whack. And so they will have to address that in the 2025 session.
Okay, and the other transportation theme is making sure the legislature knows how important the 50-30-20 split is between ODOT, the counties, and the cities. So, and the last thing, at the kind of ceremonial opening of the legislative session a week ago Monday, I had a nice opportunity to talk to the governor, and after her speech in a reception at Mahonia Hall, and got to talk to her about our mental health crisis center, and that's in the springtime, some kind of grand opening, and I gave her an invitation to schedule permitting to come down and tour the facility and see what Benton County is doing. And I think I got a good reception to that idea. And she did point out that Benton County is nice and close to Salem, so that should be possible, but we need to put that on our radar and as a way of showcasing what we're doing here.
Yeah, Commissioner Malone, I think to address your first issue, transportation related comment, the co-chairs of the Joint Transportation Committee have stated explicitly that any tweaks to 50-30-20 are off the table. So, assuming everybody continues to operate in good faith, the counties will still receive their share of any sort of transportation related revenues that come in. And then to your second point, as somebody who lives in Corvallis, I drive by the corner of 4th and Van Buren constantly. So I've seen how quickly that building's coming up, and it seems like it's getting fairly close to completion. So excited to maybe have that opportunity to get the governor down to tour these sorts of facilities.
I did point out that in her State of the State speech, she mentioned behavioral health prominently, and this facility fits right in with that theme.
Yeah, and I think the other leg of that stool is, we saw some pretty significant funding outlays in House Bill 4002 last session. And it's important that counties that set up these deflection programs and use that money wisely are able to have a sustainable funding source to continue those operations.
All right, thank you, and buckle up.
All right, any other questions or comments? With that,
Oh, Commissioner, I just wanted to real quickly say we once again, and I think as you all know, part of being successful in this session is about relationships and building networks and having opportunities. And so once again, Benton County is going to be pleased to host the legislative breakfast that is going to be coming up on February 1st with the help of Zach and Ryan and orchestrating that. We're also looking at maybe some more opportunities down the road to maybe invite some agency heads or other key leaders in the state that may be able to also network with our community around opportunities and ideas. So just wanted to put that on your radar. I know it's all on your calendars, but February 1st will be our first breakfast.
thank you. And thank you to Zach and Ryan.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we will move along to item 5.2, Coffin Butte Landfill and Regional Sustainable Materials Management Plan Task Force Overview. And as staff comes up, yes, please feel free to grab your spiffy new name tags. So it looks like we have Petra Schutz with us today, Bailey Payne, and Sean McGuire. Welcome, everyone.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'll just do a quick little overview of our presentation today. A week or so ago, gave Commissioner Shepard an overview as he quickly slips through a fire hose while all the briefings. And so the county administrator said that this would be a good point to leap off of as a foundation for not just you, but also our community members. So Bailey's going to do an overview of the Coffin Butte. Petra will do the permit application process, and then I'll do an update of the SMMP.
Morning, excuse me. Good morning, Commissioners. Bailey Payne, Solid Waste Program Coordinator. Glad to be here with you this morning. I'm going to be giving you just a little overview of the history of the Coffin Butte landfill. Need to share.
Go down Zoom.
Looks like we're just taking a moment to get that PowerPoint pulled up.
There we go. Thank you. I'm going to go through these slides pretty quickly to allow for time on these other topics. The Coffin Butte landfill, this area, of course, was initially inhabited by the Californians, and then in the 1700s, European trappers began to come to the area. By the mid 1800s, pioneers. And then in the early 1900s, farming, and it became more developed. From the 40s to the 60s, as you know, Camp Adair was in operation in the 1940s, World War II. And so that's when the area first became what we call a landfill now, actually a kind of a dump back then. In the 50s and into the 60s, they started to recognize some of the problems, environmental problems associated with the way waste was managed, which often included just lighting a match at the end of the day and burning the pile down. So we've got some old historic photos here. And then the 70s, environmental concerns became a little more top of mind. In the early 70s was the Chemeketa Plan, which was the first regional look at how waste should be handled in Northwest Oregon. And Coffin Butte was targeted as one of the sites that they considered at the time to make sense. In 1974, the Planning Commission approved a CUP, conditional use permit, allowing for expansion. In 1975, Valley Landfills purchased the Coffin Butte site, and the old burned up was finally closed by 77. An important thing that happened in the 70s was the passing of the Resource Conservation Recovery Act. This is the primary law and remains so in governing the disposal of solid waste and hazardous waste. This was a really important development because prior to that, each town had maybe several small dumps, and they weren't monitored. Often they were set next to creeks and rivers. There was no pollution containment really with them. So in the 70s, with the passage of the RCRA, that really forced solid waste planners to manage waste in a more responsible way. In the 1983, Benton County altered the comprehensive plan to create a landfill zone. This was done at the landfill's request. Throughout the 90s, there began to be improvements in capturing the landfill gas. That's pretty common of all large landfills now, that the gas is captured both as a pollutant mitigation strategy, but also because there's value in that landfill gas. So that began in 1994. In 97, they began expanding the gas to energy facility. And at the end of 99, there was a large fire at the landfill. That's a picture of the turbine inside the gas to energy facility. That's them installing a well for the gas. And so in 2017, and I'll get to this in just a moment, but that's when a pretty large increase in the amount of tons that Coffin Butte receives began to happen. They renewed the landfill franchise agreement through 2040. And one clause that's in that agreement is that if a CUP, if an expansion is allowed in the future, then the current cap of 1.1 million tons will go away. In 2021, there was the large wildfires that Oregon encountered, and so that waste had to go somewhere, and a lot of it came to Coffin Butte. You can see in this top graph here that was around 2017 when waste numbers really increased. There were a couple of reasons for that. One is that the Riverbend landfill had closed in Yamhill County, making Coffin Butte really the only large waste landfill in the area. Also, Marion County began sending more of its waste down to the Coffin Butte landfill, which has continued since. Actually, I'll just go back real quick. On the bottom, you can see that Coffin Butte receives waste from all over Oregon, but most of it you can tell is in the Willamette Valley to the coast. This graph, I'll start with the bottom one. This shows how many tons each year have been either composted or recycled. And you can see that we've had a little dip in the last couple of years. So in 2022, it was 33,000 tons were recycled or composted. Moving up, you can see the yellow line there, and that shows how much was disposed. And this is only looking at Benton County. It includes all residents and businesses too. So you can see that the amount that we're recycling has been dropping the last couple of years. Meanwhile, the amount that we're throwing away is going up. So that's not a good sign. And if you move up to the darker blue line, the third one up, you can see that reflected in our recovery rate. So the recovery rate being everything that's composted, recycled, burned for energy recovery. These are all forms of recovery. And in 2022, the most recent numbers available, we had dropped down to 31.5%, which is among the lowest since we've begun keeping track of this. So it's that is certainly a concern. And the one that causes me the most concern is the top blue line. That's showing how much of everything that we consume, regardless if it's recycled or composted or thrown away. And the reason for that is that, or the reason that I'm concerned about that number is that most of the environmental impacts happen when products are manufactured and made and natural resources are extracted. So that's environmentally a concerning trend. And are we going to hold questions to the end or? Yeah.
Questions?
So I want to start by thanking you for running me through this earlier. I wanted to do a couple comments, and I think one of them is going to come up in a little bit. But if you go back to the slide about that has Oregon on it, yeah, that one. When we spoke, we were talking about how those percentages are not they're the percent of the pie that goes into Coffin Butte, not the percent from those counties, correct? Because some of those counties, 100% of their trash goes to Coffin Butte. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So, and I believe Sean will be talking about this too, but Lincoln, Tillamook, Polk, Lynn, of course, Benton County's waste is about 10% of what's received each year.
Okay, thank you. And then question about caps. So we talked about this. Is this something that will be saved for the next portion, or is this a good time to ask about caps?
Probably now.
Okay. So when we spoke, we talked about how there are some things that count towards the cap and some things that do not count towards the cap. And if we count everything, we're well above what the cap is, but there are things that do not count towards that, like fire, stuff that's left over after fire, correct?
Right. Yeah. A lot of that's contaminated soils, asbestos, rock, fill dirt. There are several different categories, but yeah, when those are deducted, then they are under the cap of 1.1 million tons.
Okay. And the next question is that whose policy is that? Is that state law or is that a policy from, so who determines what's a part of that cap and what isn't?
That was in the franchise agreement between Benton County. So that was Benton County's imposed cap.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate the history of the landfill, and I noticed you changed the terminology from dump, which it was in the beginning, to a landfill, which has a lot of rules and regulations and monitoring and kind of, I guess you didn't mention collecting the leachate that runs off, and appreciate that. I think I'll save my next question for the second part of the discussion. So, thank you, but do appreciate the kind of how did we get to this point, because there's a lot of discussion about that, and also the map of Western Oregon, and just who accesses the facility. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And, I'll also just add that this wasn't my work putting all this together. It was really the work of the BC, the Benton County Talks Trash process, that brought about a lot of this information that wasn't more easily available prior to that.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, and I do appreciate the talk about some of our neighboring counties, and I know, and maybe that would be worth, or maybe that slight information is running around, but Tillamook and Lincoln counties send 100% of their solid waste to Coffin Butte, and don't have, because of their climate, don't have many options other than shipping it out of their coastal areas.
And I'll just put a plug in for anyone who has not reviewed the Benton County Talks Trash final report. I highly recommend doing so. It is very long and can be kind of intimidating, but if you focus on the first 108 pages, specifically the findings and recommendations, it is a pretty, it can go quick, and it's very important information.
Well, and to follow up on that, that was a significant effort by quite a few volunteers, that, and we kept extending the deadline, and but those folks hung in there and really developed a lot of information that we need to go forward. So we owe them a debt of gratitude for their extensive efforts.
Okay. And good morning. Happy New Year. My name is Petra Sheets. I'm the Interim Community Development Director here at Benton County. And I have a couple slides just as a reminder of the Coffin Butte application for expansion of Coffin Butte and where we're at with that process and what it looks like. And it has nothing to do with the franchise agreement. So that's completely separate. So that's one clarification I wanted to make from the lead. So the very first step in the quasi-judicial process, and that means that the Planning Commission gets to make a discretionary decision about this application is the completeness review. That means that all the technical information and all the criteria are met from a staff review perspective, and also opportunity for our state partners to take a look at it to make sure that there's enough information in there to make a decision. And so this is just a quick schematic that says that, you know, if that's complete, then you get a start 150-day period to go through that discretionary process, and that includes the appeal period. If it's not, then the applicant has, it says 30 days, and that's just best practice for us. I mean, 95% of the time we're able to ask for additional information from the applicant and get started within a 30-day period. In this particular case, the applicant had given us, Republic Services had put in their 1,200-page document, and they needed a lot more time to go through that, and staff did as well. And we did ask them to, and really as an homage to, and paying close attention to the Benton County Talks Trash process, we asked them for quite a bit of additional information to make sure that it was aligned with that work. And then there was also some missing technical information that we asked for. And they had a second round of information that was brought to us in November. And then we asked for some additional supplementary information that they got to us in a timely manner within the 150 days. And that was January 14th, 15th. And so that gives them an opportunity to give us a little bit more time to make sure that we can have a few days. And somebody had told me that they gave us an additional 58 days to look at it, but I didn't see that with my own eyes. So I don't want to say that that's for sure how many days they've allowed us to look at it. It's not going to take us that long. It should just be another week, 10 days at the most, to make sure that they've given us everything that they intend to give us. And they've indicated that they have given us everything they intend to give us. So I think we're pretty close to the completeness or completing the completeness process. Slide, please. So once you start that 150-day period, again, we're very close to that. Then it's again on the balls in the staff's court. So at this point, we will be doing our technical review and writing the staff report, setting up interested parties list and making sure that everybody understands that we have an extended public comment period for folks. And then put some tentative dates on public hearings. And the commission chair, Nick Fowler, had a good idea for efficiency purposes, which is we're expecting a lot of public comment. So to have days out probably in mid-March for those public hearings, and probably going to be day after day after day, so we don't have to wait month after month after month for public hearings, so that we give folks an opportunity to hear in a short amount of time all the public comments. And then also give the elected officials an opportunity to make the decisions that the flexibility to make the decisions that they'd like to make, which is, making changes to the staff report, denying it, appealing it, actually moving the public hearing forward with some more time. So there's a lot of there's 4 or 5 different options when this is before the Planning Commission. So this is, again, just a schematic that shows the basic steps. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, but we have this posted on our website as well. And we do think that it's relatively likely that regardless of what Planning Commission decides, that will likely go through an appeal process to the Board of Commissioners. It will likely go through an appeal process to the Land Use Board as well at the state level. So this just shows you what that looks like. But if it isn't appealed, then the applicant has a year to meet the conditions of approval for the application before the process is completed. And that's the basics of it. I know that a really common question is, well, what's the criteria? And it's deep down in the development code. So if you have a slide, I thought I'd pull that out for you all. I've already talked about the fact that a conditional use several times, not in this meeting, so I'll repeat myself. A conditional use or land use permits, when you say that there could be an adverse effect on the surrounding permitted uses, so it's not allowed outright, that means there's some discretion on what that can be. And a permit is required to establish that conditional use. Forward. And so here's the different criteria. It's pretty broad, that it does not seriously interfere with the uses of adjacent property, that doesn't impose undue burden on public improvements, facilities, et cetera, and that the use complies with the additional criteria. And so in the next slide, I'll show you the specific criteria that the Planning Commission and then eventually the board needs to pay attention to. So these are some more specific, each of these are criterion that they can use to create conditions based on the technical analysis and the feedback that they get from the public. And I believe that's all I have for you this morning.
Should we pause there and ask for questions?
Yeah, just briefly, I want to, first of all, thanks for the slides in advance. It's really helpful to have it here, and especially the conditions of approval. I think that having those all in one space, or at least mostly in one space, is a very helpful tool as we go into this process. So I must have missed it. So you're right now, we're very close to determining if the application is complete or not, correct? And has the clock started, or does the clock start after we determine it's complete?
After staff make sure that they have given everything that they need to have. And technically, I think they have. But the other thing is that their attorney has said that they've given us essentially everything they intend to give us. So even if they might be missing some technical information, at this point, that's just going to need to be vetted in the public.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I was looking at you also mentioned that the chair of the Planning Commission is anticipating having multiple days of public hearing and a continuance of it. I think that's wise. And where are you planning on having those hearings? Is that in the building here?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments before we move along?
Well, just a comment. I appreciate this is a complex issue with a lot of community interest, and I think the more information like this that we can get out, this is the process. Kind of one of those arrows. You are here. Kind of approach, so everyone can see how far along the process we are, because there are various timetables. I guess one question we've gotten is, well, I thought you had 30 days for the county to turn this around, and so would you go and explain that again, just how that's worked in this instance?
So yeah, once the applicant brings in their initial application, the county has 30 days to respond the first time. Then once they've had that first initial contact with the applicant then has 150 days then to complete that iterative dialogue. And the reason is that for good customer service and the public outreach, that the applicant does have a right to ask questions and get that feedback from the folks outside of the public structure, so that they can pull together, what their vision is for what they'd like to do. And so that's what that process is created for, is to be able to have a free conversation about their intentions. And we provide that for all of our clients, right? And then once it's considered complete, all the correspondence and the staff reports and the comments that are collected are then public record. And the public are then part of that, an integral part of the process.
And you were saying earlier that we're very close to wrapping up this phase of the discussion, the application, and the 160-day clock will
150.
150.
Mhm.
The legislature's 160.
Yeah, and cities are 180s.
And so perhaps by the end of the month, Benton County will be finished with our review of the application and deem it complete or not complete.
Yeah, we're certainly ready for the next phase of this.
Okay, thank you.
All right, please continue.
Excellent. Thank you, commissioners. So I'm going to go over an update of the SMMP, the Regional Sustainable Materials Management Plan Task Force. Hopefully you'll see how a lot of these things that have been talked about this morning are related. Some are separate, but also related. So this all started, as you've been hearing about, from Benton County Talks Trash. Back in 21, the Public Service also asked for an expansion. That was denied before it went through the appeals process. Talks Trash was created. This was a group of local residents, experts, staff here, and they did, as you said, Commissioner, really a bang-up job. It was impressive to be a part of that. So a couple of the objectives of that was kind of what Bailey already looked at, was just a bridge. What has happened so far? We didn't really have a specific report or any materials to point to. In fairness, it was, hey, we have a franchise agreement, let's sign, move on. And we really didn't have that history and issues and all that. So that was one. The second was the facilitator had, before Talks Trash started, talked a lot with community and found that there was just a lot of misunderstandings, protocols, kind of a soup of mistrust and on all sides. And so it was an effort just to kind of walk through all these independently to see what can we agree on, what can't we at least put it in writing for us to be as a springboard moving forward. So that full committee and subcommittee met between September 2022 to April 23. As Commissioner Weiss said, if you go on to our the BOC homepage and click on SMMP, there's a direct link to that 1,200-page report or whatever it is. Yes, but you can have those resources there. In that, in the Talks Trash, that whole process, there were 5 subcommittees. As you see here, the first 4 were very specific to Coffin Butte. That 5th one is what we're here for today, the Sustainable Materials Management Plan. There was a small group. They looked at how we're going to move forward, whether that's requests for proposals, what should be included. And that was our starting of how we started working with the regional SMMP. I want to kind of go back to Commissioner Shepard's comments. This is what Bailey showed on the amount of trash at Coffin Butte. What Commissioner Shepard was talking about is how much is it of each county going to Coffin Butte. So I want to stay on this slide for a little bit. As Bailey had said, there are 6 counties that 100% or close to go to Coffin Butte. Tillamook, Lincoln, Benton, Lynn, Marion, Polk. And so when we start looking at these things as a regional scale, yeah, these questions come up, as Commissioner Malone said. These transfer stations and those haulers are pillars of that community. And so when we start talking about, well, Riverbend is shut down, the incinerator is down, Lane is their own, it starts to look at an overview of just how this system is working, not just Coffin Butte on its own, but how it's working as a system. So if you're in Tillamook or Lincoln, and when Coffin Butte shuts down, whether that's the current estimate of 2037, 39, which came out of Talks Trash, as Bailey said, we have fires, we have risks that can fluctuate. We need to start making decisions now, as well as bringing in our regional partners. And so, yeah, if you're on the coast and this Coffin Butte is shut down, are you going all the way out to Arlington, which is going from a 90-minute drive to a 5-hour drive and back? how is that ripple effect with our communities? Another thing is we currently don't have a transfer station. It's called Coffin Butte. What questions did that open up? Just back of the envelope, that's $30 to $50 million to build one, 5 years to plan for it. These are decisions that if you made today, we're again 50 million in 5 years away. Who's going to pay for that? Where is that going to be sited? Are we doing this along with other counties? Are we going our own? Bailey, myself, and others are trying to put some of those policy options together for you now, but there's no switch that just everything's all perfect. And so this is another issue what the SMMP is trying to look at, looking forward in a both regional and long-term in the next 10 to 12 years. Another thing I wanted to say that the subgroup is going to look at is how all this is related. Bailey had talked about that there is a cap of 1.1 million. If the expansion is approved, then that goes away. Just one of many triggers is that Metro has one of their policies that if Coffin Butte does expand, they will not send their trash here. So where does that go? And so I call it the Geppetto effect. One string moves over here and they all kind of move together. This is not an isolation. This is one giant interrelated system, if that's fair, Bailey. So what we did, and by we, Bailey and I, we went on a talking tour over the summer in about 6 weeks. We talked to 40, 50, we call them Baileys from the other 12, the solid waste managers from the other 12 counties, Metro, Portland. We included DEQ at the beginning. Governor's office is also there, industry leaders, innovators. So on October 21st was our first kickoff. We have, I forgot what the noun is now, 20 members of the task force. We're trying to keep the formality down a little bit because we only have 6 months. This ends on June 30th. And so just making sure that we have a smaller group that are kind of guiding this process with subcommittees. On this slide, rather than giving 5 or 6 slides, I refer you to pages 52 and 53, where in your packet, or if those online can look at it, where it lays out the purpose, guiding principles, and intended outcomes. This is really a coordination and a strong purpose to create regional solutions. How can we start looking for the future to really make a difference at the beginning? I want to come full circle to what Bailey said. 99% of all pollution comes from generation of materials. By the time it gets to either a landfill or recycling or a compost, you're looking at 1 to 2%. So how can we stop generating these, really lean into reuse? That's when we start talking about sustainable materials. And it's really encouraging to have DEQ, some of their experts have been on board since the beginning. And so we're really trying to walk hand in hand to see how can they use us as a region to start looking at solutions in the long term. Some of the other things on the desired deliverables, as we get to these, we have identified 4 working groups. One is on food and organics. The other is built environment and products and packaging. Those first 2, again on page 53, have the experts from DEQ on those 2 topics. So it's really exciting to see how we can do that. One of many options is what Portland does with the deconstruction code. How would we do that here? How many counties and jurisdictions would have to be involved to move the market into a systemic way? These are some of the questions that those subcommittees would be looking at. And then we have a 4th, which is regional solid waste management, to kind of get to the questions that I was just talking about and that Bailey referred to earlier on. The other aspect of this is each subcommittee will have a matrix of questions. And so we're kind of building that up. What are the equity issues, environmental justice? Where are these stations going to be put? How do we look at long-term material management? We have issues of, underserved communities are different than well-served communities. How do we start looking at these materials? Are they more expensive? What kind of pressures is that going to put on lower income residents? So these are some of the questions that we've been looking at as a matrix per each one. And then we can start pulling those together to kind of compare and contrast all of those topics. And so the desired deliverables, as you see here, 1, just get an overview and a context of where we are, success stories that we can build off of. resources and key findings so that we can start looking at this long-term when this does end on June 30th and present recommendations. And to whom that is yet to be determined. You heard legislation from CFM this morning. Could be legislative, could be budgetary, could just be how the jurisdictions work together. No door is closed right now. It's more of an exploration. So that's a very quick overview of where we are, and have more questions.
Questions or comments?
So the Recycling Modernization Act takes effect July, correct? That's of this calendar year?
Yeah, July 1st is when it officially launches. I've been cautioned to think of it as a dial, not a switch.
Okay.
Because things will be implemented over the course of the next couple of years.
And the SMMP process ends June 30th, is what you were saying.
Correct. I would say the task force.
The
ends.
task force. Okay.
That's really kind of serving up a platter of what can be done next. And to get to your point, we have been very careful and aware moving forward from our very first call to DEQ not to impede, step on toes. The RMA process is already complicated enough, and jurisdictions going, okay, how is this going to work? Last thing we need is some of us to walk in and kind of muddy the water. So we've really been trying our best not to kind of get in that way. RMA is over here, and we're trying to look at separately.
That was part of my question, because that is going to be such a big difference in how Oregon treats its recycling, which is going to affect tonnage going to various places potentially. I mean, that's the goal. So I was just wondering how much of a part of the SMMP conversation the Recycling Modernization Act is, and I think you just answered that. So
Trying to keep that separate. It's all one. It's all related, but yeah, we don't want to get in front of that train.
Okay, thank you.
Always good advice. Well, I think I've made this comment before. We have a regional landfill, and but we still very recently didn't have regional partners very involved in this or in these discussions, and that means the discussions weren't very accurate, and so we have the opportunity to move forward, identify the partners, and I appreciate all the effort that it's taken to. We may know who the partners should be. This is all voluntary, and to have different jurisdictions assign people to this task force and a relatively short time frame to operate in. But and I think one point that needs to be emphasized is the clock is ticking. And we really do need to help develop a sense of urgency. The Coffin Butte, the expansion goes forward or not, it's a fairly limited lifespan that, and for the most part, we haven't time developing alternatives. And so I hope part of this developing a sense of urgency that this isn't some thing off in the future that somebody else can take care of. It's something we need to get going on as soon as possible. I mean, I've just starting my 7th year as commissioner, and amazed how long it takes to get things done, whether it's a small project like the bike path between Corvallis and Albany, the crisis center, or the courthouse. There are obvious impediments to moving forward, and then there are the surprising ones that we didn't know till we got in process. So I hope part of what we achieve here is to make sure everyone involved, our partners know that the clock is ticking and these discussions need to develop some answers how we move forward.
If I can, this has been one of the coolest, most insightful processes of my career. Bailey's the expert, but it's been great walking through this whole thing and hitting to exactly what you talking to so many different counties and municipalities and elected officials to see just how decentralized everything is. I mean, we each have a franchise agreement. And that's just the counties, but also the jurisdictions below that. And I think that's going to be the biggest issue. How can we start to look at this in the aggregate and not just one-offs? And I just love the conversation with Lane County. How can we start working as a region and not just disparate parts? I mean, famous saying, you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go with others. And so just to have that initial conversation has been really enlightening. And yeah, it's been a very positive experience.
And earlier you mentioned other counties, Bailey's. Well, I think there's only one. So,
Concur.
and glad you're on board here.
Me too. Thank you. I'll just take this opportunity to remind us all that the SMMP is just one recommendation from the Benton County Talks Trash, and that there are several other recommendations. We can't do everything all at once. So we are focusing on the SMMP right now, but I just want to make sure that we don't lose track of the fact that we have other recommendations to address in the future, and that at some point, the board should have a conversation about prioritizing those other recommendations. Things like creating and sharing a plan for the enforcement of all franchise agreements, taking steps to acquire better info about methane emissions, monitor and enforce previous conditions of approval, a reporting and tracking system, etc. Thank you. Any last comments?
Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Before,
I just turned it on.
These mics are tricky. So before we move on to the next item, sorry, Gary, I'm going to call for a 10-minute break. So we will be back at 10:32. All right, well, we can get going again with our meeting. And next up, item 5.3, County Facilities Update with our very own Gary Stockoff, Public Works Director. Welcome.
Very own. All right. Welcome. Thank you, commissioners. Good morning. A quick update on the big three projects. I'll do the crisis center since it is underway. Still going along splendidly. I think we had a second tour back just before Christmas that folks hopefully got to go on that didn't make the first one. Budget wise, it's right where it's supposed to be. We did have a little bit of an add because OHA or somebody had changed some laws regarding some security and doors. And so we had to make a pivot there and the team addressed that. Really the next step is the operational side of the facility. I know Health has hired a contractor to help, I think, project manager to get that underway. I know that person has contacted Paul Walsinger to get his assistance in certain areas. So Paul, we're still involved on that, but that will be the big lift. The next big lift is getting it operational. A lot of moving parts to that facility. So that's my quick update on the crisis center.
You mentioned a modest cost increase. Is there enough in contingency to cover that without really?
I believe they found a separate funding source to take care of that. They, as in Health did, yes, Damien.
Great, thanks.
Okay, onto the courthouse. We are very, very, very close. I know, I've said it months now. The hinge point right now is the permit from Corvallis. And I'll just say there's one permit that we have to get from Corvallis to get started. It has several different components associated with that before it gets released. One of them was the Corps of Engineers permit, which is not only for wetlands and sensitive areas, but it was for the beloved Swick House. As you probably know, we got a signed memorandum of understanding. I'm working very hard here not to use all acronyms. The MOA, that was signed right after the first of the year. We have that in our hand. That has since been sent to the city, so they've been able to check that box. Our staff, our design team has met with the Corps of Engineers and they went through the memorandum of understanding and all the requirements and the timings and this, that, and everything for that. There are a couple of the items, conditions of approval on the MOA that we can start now. We have to start now because once the house is gone, we can't take stuff up the inside and and do some monitoring of that. The big lift for the Swick House will be our contractor Hoffman will actually go out and solicit for a demolition deconstruction contractor that would come in and deconstruct the house, salvage the historic materials, and then they sell it somewhere else. We have some money in the project act actually help offset that. That'll probably start pretty soon. The soonest we can remove the house, I believe, is June or July of this year. So that's where we're at with that. That's one part of that city permit. The Mylar, the maps for the final plat, they are in the process of being signed right now by the city. So that's good news. Once they have completed that, usually then our surveyor goes over, gets it, and then he shepherds it around to get it signed by all of the county folks. And then the next step on that process is that we would record that final plat, which then makes it official. That then ties back to the permit that they can release it, that there's now evidence that the property is ours, even though we had the Judd settlement that said it was, still had to do the final plat. And it's taken a little bit of time to get the final plat done and all the conditions met on that. We will have system development charges to pay. So we're getting that number calculated. We have already paid our public improvement private contract, PIPSI fee, which was a cool $124,000. So that's been paid to the city. So we've checked that box. And then I think the last thing before we are actually able to go out and turn some dirt is a pre-construction meeting with city staff to lay that out, how we're going to go and the timing of all that. So presently, we are still shooting for February 7th as having something out there to show that we're starting. And we do appreciate the dry weather right now because it does help us for the interim. On the schedule, commissioners, it shows it being out into early 2027. That actually takes into account having it all operationalized, having all the media, the video, everything all set up. Remember, we have the courts involved here too. So there's a lot of fine tuning and fine points that are going to have to be done to where we can actually then start holding court there, literally. Our contractor still thinks that we can have this done probably in the fall of 26. That's the goal. Because this project's been so unique and how long it's taken to get started, a lot of the things that would have happened at the start of the project, we went ahead and did. And so unknowns are kind of known. We've taken care of, I'll say we've checked some boxes. So what Hoffman is hoping is that once we actually do get into construction, they will be able to then move it right along in a pretty expedited fashion, which also relates to the EOC. It shows it being done sooner. I still think they'll probably push the start of the EOC out to where both of them are done about the same time. Having the EOC ready to operate though, if we can just keep Brian Lee out of the way. Oh, sorry, Brian. Having the EOC up and running will be a much easier task because there's just not a lot of moving parts. And it's a it's a pre-engineered metal building. Staff has worked with Brian and his folks on all the radios and all the other audio visual and everything else, because there's going to be a heavy training component associated with that building as well. So it's coming along quite well. Budget wise, we're trying to get final numbers because of the delay, because of some issues, added requirements from the city. The cost has gone up. Rick and I are meeting with the team later this week. Hopefully within a couple of weeks, we'll have a better number for what that means. And then we'll be able to report that at the next one. But fingers crossed, we were about ready to get this thing coming out of the ground, or actually being on the ground. And the EOC is right there too. So if there's any questions on either of those projects, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions?
I appreciate your clarification on the timetable. I saw getting into 2027 instead of summer of 26, and that's kind of I see it's in blue, so it's I mean the separating out the actual construction, which we're not. There hasn't been that much of a slippage, and I remember this building, and I think it because of supply constraints, it was a year after we were in it before we got all the fancy AV equipment. So I understand that. And that's part of being operational, but that's different from having the building there and ready for us. So looking forward, I see Ann there in the back, and just because it's taken us a while to get to this point, and lots of relatively short postponements, but been a series of them. We ought to have some kind of celebration of we're rolling now. We are past the paperwork stage and ready to actually build a building.
And that's a very good point, Commissioner. I think now, because of when we will start, I think if we shoot for somewhere when it's probably hopefully a little drier, warmer, and we'll be well underway, and there'll be a lot of equipment out there, and it'll be a good show. That would be a good opportunity to do that groundbreaking, whatever you guys want to do it. But yeah, we're excited. Finally get the JSIP sign taken down, and and be underway out there.
Well, the groundbreaking can be whenever we can get some of our, especially elected partners, schedules
Yeah.
lined up and maybe a little bit more towards spring when we have better chance of better weather, although right now it's not too bad, but check the calendar, is still January, but we will have a lot to celebrate this spring.
One item I did forget to mention is that we are still working with Oregon Judicial Department, OJD, to finalize our phase 1 agreement. That has taken some time as well. Rick and Greg and I and Vance are working really hard to try to get that wrapped up because obviously the county has already invested quite a bit of money in this. And some of this is money that the state should be repaying us. So we're trying to get that finalized. I think we're, again, one of those this close items. We met last week with them or the week before and had a chat with them about that. So that is still one item pending out there, but that doesn't impact our starting construction. That just impacts how we move the money around.
Hi, Gary. 2 questions. Of course, it always revolves around federal funding, which is your favorite subject. Are we concerned at all about what the Emergency Operations Center and the funding that we received now? Is it 5 years ago?
We've pretty much spent that.
Okay.
That was the beauty of the FEMA and what Brian was able to do to get switched around for design only. We have used it for design only. And I think somewhere along the way, we also got an extension for when we could get that money spent. So we're in good shape with the FEMA money that came for us for the EOC.
And I just wanted to kind of put you on the spot here on the historic courthouse. Renovations going on, roof. What's the status update on that?
I think at this point, we did the roof last year and the bids were quite out there. I have not talked to Paul about plans for the second go round of the roof for the old courthouse. I can check on that.
Thank you.
On the roof, I do remember some comment from probably better part of a year ago of that it wasn't any kind of emergency. I mean, we need a roof, but it's the current one is had some more life left in it.
I sort of remember that, but I want to make sure I'm not misremembering. So I will circle back and report on that one.
All right. Any other final comments or questions? No, any last words for us today, Gary?
No.
All right.
Happy to be where it's not 5 degrees above zero. So it's warm here.
It is. Thank you. All right. And with that, we will move along to new business. Item 6.1 is appointment of local public health administrator, resolution R 2025-001. And we have with us April Holland from Health Services. And Sarah Hartstein is also with us today.
Good morning, commissioners and Rachel. I am April Holland, she, her pronouns. I serve as the health department director, and I am joined by Sarah Hartstein, our public health division director. I'm very pleased to bring for your approval an appointment for Sarah to serve as our local public health administrator. Oregon Revised Statutes or ORS 431 requires appointment of a local public health administrator. Sarah's been serving in an interim role since our public health division director since March 2023 and has taken on a lot of the all of the duties of the Public Health Division Director. And this is the last remaining piece, I think, to have her officially appointed as our administrator. So in terms of process, as the Board of Commissioners appoints the local public health administrator, we will forward that notification on, that appointment on to Oregon Health Authority, at which point the administrator will officially become an agent of Oregon Health Authority in terms of stewarding public health funds, plans, goals and policies, reporting, and staffing. So I'm pleased to bring the resolution before you today and welcome any questions or comments that you might have for me or for Sarah.
All right, any questions? In that case,
I just
I
want
would
to add on. Sorry, I apologize.
please continue.
Just that Sarah's been a real partner in the last year and a half. It's been really impressive to work under such a strong leader for Benton County. So really endorse this.
Very good. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move to approve resolution number R 2025-001, appointing Sarah Hartstein as the local public health administrator.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, Sarah. And yep. You also get the honor of having our very first resolution of the year. And is there anything you would like to say to us or? It's on. Yeah.
Just thank you. I look forward to serving in this role and appreciate your support and welcome, Commissioner Shepherd.
Thank you. Well, have a wonderful day. County Administrator McEnany is asking if you maybe have a quick update for us about the cold weather sheltering and activities.
Sure. I'd be happy to give as much as I can recall. So cold or severe weather overflow sheltering has been active throughout the weekend. We hold a contract, the Benton County Health Department holds a contract with a local organization to provide hotel and congregate sheltering when weather thresholds meet a certain meet certain criteria. We anticipate that sheltering is going to continue for some time as we have these really cold temperatures overnight. In terms of population served, people served and kept warm over the last couple of nights. Last night, there were 83 people who received a warm place to sleep. I also want to share that we were able to partner and with the city of Corvallis in a newer intergovernmental agreement the health department has with the city for use of the library meeting room space, because yesterday was yesterday night and the night before is right in the middle of a long spate of really cold weather. We were concerned about the health effects of not having daytime warming due to our holiday that we were celebrating yesterday. So I want to commend the library and the city, as well as the staff and volunteers who came together to open up that space and provide a welcoming, warm space for folks. Over 40 people showed up yesterday. So I do want to be clear that we may not always have the capacity to operate daytime warming. In this instance, due to the cold weather on both ends and it being a one-day activation, we were able to make that work. So really grateful for that, and to everyone in the community who is just serving people every day, and particularly our most vulnerable citizens.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. Well, thank you, April, for letting us put you on the spot. Much appreciated.
Anytime.
All right. With that, we will move along to item 6.2, adoption of updated county policy A102, smoke, vape, and tobacco-free facilities and grounds. And we have with us today Andy Chouinard and Rocio Munoz. And please, if I got your name, if I mispronounced your name, please feel free to correct me.
Hi, good morning. Buenos dias, commissioners and Rachel. Thank you so much for having us here this morning. My name is Rocio Munoz. I use a, she, her pronouns. And I'm accompanied here by my colleague, Annie Chouinard. We're part of the Healthy Communities program. That's part of the public health division under our health department. And so I will just quickly provide an overview of what Healthy Communities does, and then pass this on to my colleague to describe a little bit more about why we're here. Healthy Communities, we believe in spaces should be created and supported and led by for all of our communities to be healthy and to be able to live, learn, work, and play in our communities. And so we work with our community members, we work with community organizations and leaders like all of you to collectively build, create those spaces that are that make healthy options or provide healthy options for our community. And so one of the programs that we support and that we lead in for our county is our tobacco prevention and education program. And Annie Chouinard is here to talk a little bit more about the work that we've been spearheading in Benton County for many years, but primarily a policy, a county administrative policy that you all, or together we adopted over a decade ago. So thank you, Andy, for being here and for leading us in this next discussion.
Okay. Thank you, commissioners. I'm Andy Chouinard, Tobacco Prevention Policy Analyst with the Health Department. My voice might crack a little bit because I'm getting over whatever this is. So also welcome, Commissioner Shepherd. As Rocio mentioned, over 10 years ago, the commissioners did pass an administrative policy establishing smoke-free properties in Benton County. This was an opportunity to signal our values to the community as an organization. And at the time, my counterpart, my predecessor, did take the county through that process, establishing the communications and signs that are featured on parks, campgrounds, natural areas, the fairgrounds, and any other places Benton County conducts operations. We have an opportunity in this funding cycle for tobacco prevention to update that policy. And this came out of some feedback from the fairgrounds that there were emerging tobacco products in addition to cannabis, which could also be rolled and wrapped into this policy to communicate to the public. So in the packet, I believe for today is the red line version of that policy, the changes that were made. This has been through the Health and All Actions Committee, the Policy Oversight Committee. We've also taken steps internally with our team. Rocio has allowed their feedback or opened it up to their feedback. And also my tobacco prevention counterparts in Marion County, Lincoln County, and Lynn County. I'm thankful to them. Adjacent to this, while the policy is being updated, I've begun meeting with facilities manager Paul Walsinger, natural parks and areas, as well as the fairgrounds, just to determine what their needs might be. So packages are being drafted that would be include updated signs and communications for those properties, major ones. So I think that brings us to today. If there are any questions over policy or the process so far, or any next steps after today's outcome.
Any comments or questions? Please.
So after reading through this, I was wondering, what is the enforcement mechanism for for this policy? So it sounds like someone can't vape at one of the campgrounds, right? That's kind of what we're adding, this e-cigarette component. What would be the enforcement policy for that?
Excellent question. This is a internal and administrative policy, so there's no code establishing, I guess, a punitive measure. We want this to be as educational as possible, and just establishing again that kind of expectation in the environment where Benton County occupies property or buildings, et cetera. So to the actual question, there wouldn't be like a fine of any kind. We would put together a package of education materials for Benton County staff, maybe to remind members of the public or guests that this is a smoke and vape free property. I hope that kind of speaks to your question.
Yeah, that answers it. Thank you.
I'm curious how our policy fits with the city of Corvallis. There, people may not know which jurisdiction they're in, and is there pretty good kind of lining up of Corvallis and Benton County on this?
Speaking to the alignment between the two organizations. Yeah, that's a good reminder, Commissioner, that it would be good for us to meet with our city counterparts just to ensure that they're fully updated on our process, since there are county properties that are in Corvallis, outside of Corvallis, and how the two interact. For example, city properties are also smoke and tobacco free. So to the question, we'll do our best to make sure that those align as best they can.
Well, I think of the courthouse, which is obviously in the city, but it's county property, and who would enforce that?
Was that
Yeah, the county policy would actually be instituted in that case. So there would be no enforcement per se. It's beyond providing the tools and the education and resources to county staff to be able to have with interactions with our community members and our public, our visitors to our county grounds.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments? I thank you for the staff report where you outline all the little changes. That's very helpful in addition to the red line, because it's very succinct and makes it easy to understand. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move to adopt Benton County Policy A102, smoke, vape, and tobacco-free property policy version 3.0.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you to everyone, and welcome, Commissioner Shepard.
Next up on the agenda, item 6.3, Oregon Department of Energy grant opportunity, request for approval of notice of intent. And we have with us Brian Lee, the emergency management, and
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Brian Lee. I'm the emergency manager for Benton County. Today, we're going to talk briefly about a notice of funding opportunity we would like to capitalize on for a grant program. And with me today is Hannah Schaefer, our hazard mitigation and recovery coordinator. With that, I'll turn it over to her.
Right. As Brian said, we're here to introduce the grant opportunity provided by the Oregon Department of Energy. This is a new state-funded program that provides grants to Oregon counties to develop a county energy resilience plan. So just for some background, in January at this time last year, many counties across the state experienced major grid disruption due to a period of winter storms and ice storms, extreme cold, and impacts included downed trees, power lines, and left around 240,000 Oregonians without power. And so this requested funding will support a direct contract to do an assessment on rural Benton County communities. We're focusing on Monroe and Philomath communities to do an energy assessment and create actions to increase energy resilience in the event of another ice storm event happening at any time. And so the proposed assessment will possibly be an annex to the natural hazard mitigation plan. And so just for some scope of work, some of the actions will be identifying and mapping existing public energy infrastructure in Philomath and Monroe. This will include transmission lines, distribution lines, substations, energy storage systems, identifying natural hazard risks to those infrastructures, and then consulting with the communities to identify any social vulnerabilities. And then identifying other actions and resources needed to implement the energy resilience plan, which includes identifying future funding opportunities to keep the work moving forward.
And just to provide one other piece of context, so this funding actually came from the federal level originally, passed down to the states, and then down to the local counties. It's a $50,000 grant, non-competitive. So any county that is interested in participating in it has the ability to apply for it. So that's why we want to capitalize it and now while it's available. The concept and unknown whether or not it'll happen in the future is whether or not this will open doors for additional funding. But we do know each year we have our hazard mitigation grant funds that are available, as well as the BRIC, which is the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Grant Program that's available each year to us. So this could provide a basis and justification for applying for some additional projects within those grant programs.
That sounds great. Comments or questions?
You mentioned two communities, Monroe and Philomath. And I realize fairly limited dollars, but if possible, seems unless there's some separate activity that I don't know about. I'm thinking of Alsea, which is can be kind of isolated physically, and I would hope that if not in this round, in the future, that we can add those folks to this planning effort.
Yeah, and originally the concept here will be to use this as a basis for planning. So we'll have an assessment and we'll have a process sort of outlined for these two communities as our target with this fund. And then in the future, we can either do additional funding for further assessments or utilize kind of the same process and apply it over the other rural communities as well. But really, it's really about the scope of work and how much we can get out of $50,000 plus our staff time to actually develop something usable for us in the future.
Great, thank you.
Further comments, questions, or a motion?
I move to approve the notice of intent for $50,000 for the Oregon Department of Energy State Grant Opportunity.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian and Hannah. All right, that brings us to the end of our agenda. Do we have any other business? Commissioner Shepherd.
Just one thing, we've been invited to attend a breakfast hosted by the Corvallis Schools Foundation, not this Thursday, but the following Thursday from 7:30 to 8:30. And we have a 9 o'clock meeting scheduled at that time, just after that. So I was wondering if we can move the start time to 9:30. If we can't, then I will drive at a safe speed, but I will make it here on time, I think. But I just wanted to check about that. And don't expect an answer today. I just wanted to bring that up while we're in session.
What was the date for that?
January 30th.
30th. Okay. We can look into that. It can be kind of hard because we have community development, natural areas, parks and events, and public works. So depending on what works for staff, we can look into that.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up. If we can't do it, then I'll try my best to be here exactly at 9.
Okay, thank you.
And this was also on my to-do list, and I think we can do better at coordinating calendars. We get invites and it would be nice to know if one or more of my colleagues are planning to go to an event, or it's nice to make sure at least one of us, whenever possible, attends these community events. And like I said, I think we can do a little better at coordinating calendars and probably at goal setting. That might be a nice time to review what we've attended and also what we're planning on attending.
Thank you, Commissioner Malone. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 11:07 a.m. Have a wonderful day, everyone.